Now, as we're thinking about obedience today, I wanted to show you just how obedient my little pet pipette here is in this bottle. We've been working very hard together at training him and helping him to understand what it means to be obedient. So, I will issue him some instructions, and he's going to do them. Pipette, to the bottom. Oh, he's a bit slow today. That's more like a bit quicker. Thank you. Now, wait there at the bottom, please. Could count to 10, couldn't we? No. Back to the top, please, Mr. Pipette. Well done. Thank you. Next time a bit quicker, please, if you don't mind. Now, I've also trained him to follow my finger down. When he sees my finger, he shall follow it in the direction it's going in. So, Mr. Pipette, here's my finger. Now, sit down we come, please. Yep. Now, I want you to come back. No, come back up. That's it. Well done. Well done. Hold it there, steady. Well done. And back up we go to the top. That's fantastic. You see, he responds to the sound of my voice, and he also follows instructions. Do we know God's voice? Do we follow God's instructions? We've thought a little bit a minute ago about having the freedom to obey. So do we use our freedom to obey and do good for God? If we're prepared to give up our lives in abandonment to God and live as his slaves, fully satisfied, fully fulfilled, totally victorious ones, then what does that look like? Radical obedience is founded in the scandalous love of God and our response to that love. So what are the limits of that radical obedience? Can God ask too much of you? Jesus showed us what it means to walk with God. In John 5, verse 19, Jesus said the Son can do only what he sees the Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son does also. And a bit later in the same chapter, verse 30, Jesus says, by myself I can do nothing. I judge only as I hear, and my judgment is just. For I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me. Can I say today, I only do what I see God doing in Jesus? Or am I able to announce, I seek only to please God? To be abandoned to God is to radically obey him, not as a taskmaster, but as a friend. From two examples of his life, we can see how Jesus was a model of radical obedience for us in both health and in hardship. Our model in health, when all is well. In Mark 1, verse 35, we discover that Jesus goes out super early to pray with the Father. It's very, very early in the morning. It's so early in the morning that even my two boys aren't awake at that point in the morning. Jesus' ministry was beginning, and he was set himself a pattern to be able to hear from God. In the Gospel of John, Jesus affirms the truth, but here in Mark, we see him living it. How can we radically obey God if we're unfamiliar with his voice? To know the voice of God, whilst as a human being, Jesus gave priority to tuning in and turning up to what God might be saying. Life at this point for Jesus was pretty good. Even the early disagreements with the Pharisees hadn't turned nasty. In a place of health, Jesus made himself available to God when no one else was watching or listening. But he's also our model in hardship. Matthew 26 and verses 39 and following shows that Jesus prayed the same prayer 3 times in the Garden of Gethsemane. My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Easter was just about to take place. A life of health had become a moment of anxiety and crushing anguish. A moment so potent that it was about to change the world. We need to remember that in Jesus' request, he's not a 21st century Westerner who was trying to save his own skin. He just recognized the enormity of what lay ahead of him. I know it's hypothetical, but if you or I were in Jesus' shoes praying that prayer today, what would we say? I can't believe you're going to make me do this, God. You're so unfair. I don't deserve this. I'm a good person. Yet not as I will, but as you will, Jesus prayed. Either Jesus was mad, or he saw beyond his humanity the temptation to pass up the moment. Jesus didn't buy the lie and lose. Instead, he abandoned himself to God's fulfilling love willingly, and he won. A model of radical obedience we will find in no one else. In both health and hardship, Jesus faced up to the call of self-abandonment for the greater joy of knowing God. He didn't fit in. The religious leaders hated him. The authorities were bothered by him, and the crowds jeered him when he didn't give them what they wanted. But it was all worth it, because being motivated by the love he knew the greater love that awaited him on the other side of his obedience.